You see the name light up on your screen. Your stomach drops. Your heart does this thing, this weird little clench, and suddenly you're staring at your phone like it's a live grenade. You let it ring. You watch it ring. And when it finally stops, you breathe again. And then, almost immediately, you feel guilty about it. If that just described the last time someone called you, I need you to stay with me. Because what's happening in that moment isn't rudeness, it isn't laziness, and it definitely isn't a character flaw. Even though you've probably told yourself it is more times than you can count. By the end of this, you'll understand something about yourself that most people spend their whole life never figuring out. And it starts with a question nobody ever asks. What if avoiding phone calls isn't about the call at all? Picture this. It's a Tuesday afternoon. You're fine, genuinely fine. You're in your rhythm, maybe working, maybe relaxing, when your phone buzzes. No text, no warning, just a call, out of nowhere. From someone who expects you to be fully present, articulate, and emotionally available, right now. This exact second, no script, no time to think, no ability to reread what you just said. In the UK, they call it phone anxiety. In American therapy circles, it's crept into conversations about social anxiety disorder. But here's what nobody tells you about that feeling. It's not really about the phone. The phone is just the trigger. What you're actually reacting to is something much older, much deeper. And this is the part that changes everything, completely logical, given what your brain has been through. And here's what's interesting. You're far from alone. A 2019 survey by Ofcom in the UK found that 40% of millennials feel anxious about making or receiving phone calls. 40%. That's not a quirk, that's a pattern. Now here's where it gets really interesting. A study published in the Journal of Anxiety Disorders found that phone call avoidance shares its neurological fingerprint with performance anxiety. Not social anxiety, performance anxiety. Translation: your brain isn't afraid of the person on the other end. It's afraid of performing without a safety net. And that's where the amygdala comes in. That almond-shaped part of your brain responsible for threat detection, the same system that kept your ancestors alive when predators were real. It doesn't distinguish between a lion and an unexpected phone call when you've been conditioned to associate real-time verbal interaction with judgment, embarrassment, or loss of control. Your cortisol spikes. Your chest tightens. Your body is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Protect you. A Harvard study on social threat processing confirmed that unscripted social interactions activate the same stress pathways as physical danger in people with elevated anxiety sensitivity. Translation: your nervous system genuinely believes the phone call is dangerous. It's not dramatic. It's neurological. And that changes everything about how you should talk to yourself when it happens. But here's the thing. This didn't start with your phone. This started long before smartphones existed. This started when you were a kid. When you were around 7 or 8 years old, you were developing something psychologists call your social performance schema. Basically, your internal rulebook for how interactions are supposed to go. And if you grew up in a home where saying the wrong thing had consequences, where a misread tone could mean punishment, withdrawal, or humiliation, your brain learned something powerful. Words are dangerous when you can't control them. By the time you were 12, you'd figured out that text messages, notes passed in class, even emails let you think before you spoke. They gave you the gift of editing yourself, of being understood correctly, of not being misrepresented in real time. If you grew up in the 90s or early 2000s in America or the UK, you watched the world shift. MSN Messenger, AIM, then texting. Suddenly, the entire generation found a communication style that felt safer, more controlled, more you. And your nervous system exhaled. The phone, the landline you had to answer in the kitchen in front of your whole family, or the call you dreaded from a teacher, or the first time you had to call a stranger for something and fumbled every word. That became the symbol of everything unpredictable about human interaction. And your brain archived that, filed it under threat. But wait, there's a darker side to this. Here's what's fascinating. The very thing that feels like self-protection is also quietly costing you. Because phone call avoidance doesn't just stay in its lane. It bleeds, and this explains why you sometimes take 3 days to respond to a voicemail from someone you actually love. Why you've let friendships slowly dissolve, not from lack of care, but from the mounting dread of catching up in real time. Why you've missed out on opportunities. The job you didn't call back about. The doctor's appointment you rescheduled twice. The relationship that needed a real conversation you kept replacing with texts that never quite landed the same way. There's a cruel irony here. You avoid calls because you care about communicating well. You don't want to be misunderstood. You don't want to say something you'll regret. You are, at your core, someone who takes connections seriously. But the avoidance, the very strategy meant to protect the quality of your relationships, starts to erode them. Not dramatically, quietly, like water wearing down stone. And this is where it gets interesting. The people who avoid calls the most are often the most thoughtful communicators when they do show up. Studies consistently show that individuals with higher verbal anxiety tend to score higher on written empathy and emotional intelligence measures. You're not bad at connecting. You're bad at connecting on someone else's timeline without preparation, without the chance to be your clearest self. And this explains everything about your relationships. Think about how people talk about you. They probably say things like, hard to reach, or you never just call. And while everyone else seems to move through phone calls like they're nothing, chatting away in line at Starbucks, calling their mom on the walk home, FaceTiming without a second thought, you feel like there's something fundamentally broken in you. There isn't. What society calls avoidance, psychology increasingly recognizes as a nervous system response to a very specific kind of social demand. Spontaneous, uncontrollable, high-stakes verbal performance. It's not that you don't want to connect. It's that the phone, as a format, strips away every tool you use to connect well. And here's what nobody gives you credit for. Your preference for intentional communication, for thinking before you speak, for choosing words with care, is not a weakness dressed up in modern technology. It is a communication style, a valid one that produces some of the most thoughtful messages, the most considered responses, the most emotionally precise conversations of anyone in the room. The world just hasn't caught up to naming it that way yet. What I'm about to tell you in the next 60 seconds reframes everything. The truth is, avoiding phone calls isn't anxiety ruining your life. It's your nervous system, loyal, exhausted, still running old protection software, trying to keep you safe from a threat it learned about before you were old enough to question it. It's not weakness. It's an old wound wearing a ringtone. And the moment you understand that, something shifts. You stop fighting yourself. You stop calling yourself broken for something your brain learned in self-defense. You start, maybe for the first time, extending to yourself the same patience you probably extend to everyone else without thinking twice. That doesn't mean you never pick up. It doesn't mean the work isn't worth doing. But it means you start from a different place, not shame. Understanding, the name lights up on your screen. Your stomach drops. But now you know why. And knowing why is the beginning of choosing differently. Not because you have to, but because you finally understand what you're actually working with. You're not antisocial. You're not broken. You're someone whose brain learned to be careful with words. And there are far worse things to be. If this resonated with something you've never quite been able to explain about yourself, you'll want to watch this next video, because it goes even deeper into why highly sensitive people feel exhausted by social interaction in ways that have nothing to do with introversion.